Alex Wooten on 100% Canadian maple syrup.
Last month, I forgot to pay my internet bill on time for the second time, and so I recently underwent my own quarantine from the internet, so-called social media, and the like. Being the unfortunate hermit that I am, needing constant stimulation, I turned on the FM radio instead for whatever watered-down, meager entertainment I knew they offered 24/7 on the original mass media device. What I was subjected to, other than commercials outweighing the content, was non-stop, end-to-end pandemic panic on every morning show, night show, and the especially obvious news report. Tales of scrambling shoppers buying up toilet paper in mass. Hand sanitizer disappearing from store shelves faster than the similarly tasting rum and eggnog on Christmas Eve, and the original feverish fake news claim of simple dust and medical exam masks being bought up to the point of mass unavailability, even on Amazon. Precisely what the government is not supposed to do. Think of how many times the government and the news, until recently last year, have portrayed UFOs as a hoax, clearly to detract from the obvious threat, encourage the incitement of panic and worry, with tales not unlike those of Black Friday beatdowns. I'd like to ask you to challenge yourself today. When you turn on the radio, TV news, social media, podcast, or anything topical, even a comedy talk show, you will not be able to go more than 5 minutes without hearing about the bloody coronavirus. Hell, talk to someone, anyone, everyone you can. Don't mention the so-called pandemic, and see how long it takes them to either ask you about it, mention a new development, crack an often unfunny joke, or blame a political scapegoat. It's almost a guarantee that 100% of the people have already been infected, not by COVID-19, but by the notion that that it already has killed a massive amount of people. In reality, the death rates and even the infection rates in proportion to total populations themselves are extremely low, with 1 in 3 in 100 dying depending on gender, age, etc., and that's only if you get infected. Are we really to be led to believe that infection rates lower than 1% of 1% are a massive threat to the global population, requiring drastic freedom limitations for the greater good? Look at Italy. They have recently issued martial law, personal space minimum distance requirements, no gatherings of more than 5 in public, a disguised banning of the right to free assembly, 2 fines followed by jail time, no leaving your home besides for groceries, the pharmacy, or work, and the communist classic, the curfew. Can you tell me how a goddamn curfew affects the spread of a disease? How the time of day has any effect at all, other than targeting the homeless population specifically? Some states offering to house them for the duration, as if they gave a shit. Sounds like the perfect pretext to set up concentration camps. We have heard from the politicians that the homeless will have priority for testing and treatment for a virus that we are fed the line of being able to carry but show no sign or symptom of. You may be a carrier but not get sick. Seems like an easy way for people like the homeless to disappear or have a vaccine tested upon them unwillingly. I won't get into my theory on this being the start of the new Holocaust, bioweapons engineered slaughter, or propaganda-based death camp collusion with the Chinese communists. No, not yet. That's tomorrow's episode. So before you're ready to listen to Big Brother and hide in your home with a cachet of toilet paper, dust masks, and Purell, eating from a can and devouring hungrily from the mainstream press's propaganda trough like a helpless hog in a barnyard pen, listen to some quick facts. The U.S. federal government initially injected or gave away $1.5 trillion, effectively gifting taxpayer money to corporations, far outweighing the wealth of the nation's own in combination with even a handful of others, meaning they can shut down and still make profit. They only stand to lose gains, which are insured privately on top of this, not to mention the gains made on panic inflation caused by massive sales of basic necessities. This, in combination with a few other factors, causing the cost of all goods to multiply more rapidly than the kung fu flu in a nursing home. All this after the December stock market crash that was automatically bailed out by the people, the taxpayer. And just for starters in Canada, a $1 billion package, with more than half going straight to Big Pharma for, quote, research and medical supplies, from our tax dollars into corporate gifting boondoggle bliss. You can read the entire list for yourself. There's almost nothing money-wise for workers' compensation other than a shortened wait in the unemployment line when you're canned in relation to this BS. We'll let our phones be monitored and spend hundreds of millions on foreign wars and terror prevention, only to scoff boldly at the notion of China, or anyone else for that matter, using this virus as a ploy to gain on stock markets. Or even as an invasion attempt? No, it's not like one country has ever tried to take over the entire world. That could never happen again. It would be irresponsible not to mention the recent national shutdown of the railways by the Wet'suwet'en in protest of pipeline-fueled land theft. China's own Hong Kong attempted revolution in the form of multi-month riots, as well as the almost 2-year-long protests of the Yellow Vest movement, were all permanently and swiftly made a serious moral offense and effectively ended by the outbreak and quarantine measures. What better a way to remedy the issues that have plagued France's traitor of a president in the form of the Yellow Vest protests lasting more than a year? And other global protests, too many in number to list in this short rant. Consider all the huge gains for the feds, the corporations, big pharma, and the clicks that the failing corporate media is now getting globally thanks to a terrified public. The control granted to the military by the evaporation of human rights and personal freedoms, not seen on a scale this steep since 9/11's Patriot Act, of detest to anyone who dares call themselves a patriot with any credible claim to competence, like forced vaccinations for kids and martial law, branded a quarantine? Get your dictionaries out, folks. A quarantine is for the sick, not for the entire population. It's scary to think how far measures could escalate if we are forced to stay indoors against our will and our rights for something that was invented by governments. Quarantine? Why didn't they lock down China? It's a communist dictatorship with total control of every airport, seaport, and industry, media outlet, etc. North Korea is a joke compared to the Nazi-like Orwellian disciples of Stalin, found in the Chinese Communist Party. If they didn't create and spread this disease intentionally as a bioweapon or population control attempt gotten out of hand, they could have easily locked down the entire nation. They are already under a 20-year-long martial law. Execution is common practice for trivial offenses. Obedience is assured by the threat of forced organ harvesting at the hands of the state. Do you really think that they have the morals to not spread a bioweapon in a Holocaust-like event possible on a global scale? Consider the CCP's record. Tiananmen Square, the one-child policy, the Falun Gong practitioner genocide and organ farming, the Uyghur Muslim roundup and disappearance. When you allow evil to grow, like a virus, it will get worse and worse. If this is indeed a threat, it was created, not organic. How could it be with a track record like China's? It's a nation on government lockdown, with more resources fueled by slave labor, unlimited funds due to the communists owning everything, and more time to test for viruses and prevent this stuff in the first place. Let's be clear here. The USA also has biolabs, like the now decommissioned Plum Island, where the deadliest strains of long-dead viruses, from modified anthrax to the reanimated Black Plague, live. No exaggeration. With many island installations operating today as so-called biodefense labs, do you trust the people who lie on a daily basis? The government and corporations that allow the Communist Party of China to buy up companies, real estate, natural resources, and even utilities? Even when the Canadian and U.S. military, RCMP, and others advise against the deals. The people who ran a pipeline down the country's throat while paying lip service to leading the fight on climate change? The same companies and stooges in Parliament's bipartisan gangbang who sold machine gun-mounted, armored assault vehicles to Saudi Arabia right before the start of the Yemen genocide, only a few weeks before, in fact. Again, you need to look at all the facts, the track record of the people who you're ready to surrender all of your freedom to for the line of staying safe. It's a whole new 9/11 war on terror, trust me. Well, hell, you'll see soon enough. This is either a way to train us for martial law in the future or the arrival of UBI, permanent martial law, house arrest, Stalinism. The machines can do most of the work. We'll live on the scraps. Just like we have been for years. The only difference is now they don't really need us anymore. So how far will you let fear of something you literally can't see or even verify the actual victims of exist deprive you of your ability to go outside? 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 months, a whole year? If you can't go outside, who's going to see them rounding people up? Their excuse will be, these people are infected. But why lock them up? Trudeau's wife seems to be fine. Boris Johnson, celebrities, other Canadian MPs even. Why are they blowing up the minuscule numbers of something not even half as serious as SARS? Or even cancer deaths from tobacco that's legally laced with poison. Based on 2015 estimates, 1 in 2 Canadians, 45% of men and 43% of women, is expected to develop cancer during their lifetime. 1 out of 4 Canadians, 26% of men and 23% of women, is expected to die from cancer. 123 people a day. 45,000 Canadians a year. Where is our war on big tobacco? That's a quarter of the population dying from preventable sickness. It's not just Big Sig's fault either. I've already done a rant on the hundreds of products legally containing known carcinogens, many of which are targeted directly at kids, from chips to candy, coffee to soup mix. But before I strike too much fear into your heart, just like they're trying to do, remember, they only have as much power as we give them. This is not China, unless we let them march across our borders and take it from us. They can't stop all of us, unless we are too scared to even think for ourselves. All I'm asking is be skeptical. After all, you can only believe half of what you hear and none of what you see. That's either from Ben Franklin or Edgar Allan Poe. I couldn't really find a definitive answer on that one. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. George Santayana. He also said, skepticism is the chastity of intellect, and it is shameful to surrender it too soon or to the first comer. There is nobility in preserving it coolly and proudly through long youth, until at last, in the ripeness of instinct and discretion, it can be safely exchanged for fidelity and happiness. From The Life of Reason, Reason in Common Sense, Schreiber's 1905, 284. I'm Al Wooten, and thank you for listening. And remember, we're all citizens of Earth. We're all citizens of Eden.